We are under 24 hours away from kicking off Husker football. And as I'm sure, we probably have a lot of opinions also on how Colorado looked yesterday in that game against North Dakota State. Again, I'm feeling pretty good about week 2, but I want to dive into UTEP here and just give some things that I think we need to look for in this game, right? Winning alone in this game isn't going to be enough of a statement, right? Nebraska needs to come out and handle themselves in a very dominant way, right? And that's something, we haven't really been able to do too much in the past against lesser opponents, is be able to really come out and dominate. And it's been more so just trying to, slowly pull away as the game goes on and make it a 2 or 3 touchdown game by the end of it, and or the other team battles with us tooth and nail until the very end, so in this transition year, for this team to take a jump, it's no longer just beating these teams like this. This is going to be about how we perform in certain areas on this field. Steve Merrill from Wager Talk Sports posted a video earlier on the channel of him and Mark Rogers where he says the indications and the simulations have Nebraska winning this game by 33 points, which is over the 27.5-point spread consistently. So Nebraska is expected to win this game by a lot and should do so. Now, looking at UTEP, they do have some upside. 115 players, 65 of those are new. They have a lot of FCS transfers at wide receiver, so there's upside there. Some of them coming from Austin P. A lot of players in from Austin P, where Scotty Walden coached prior. The O-line is a mixture of Austin P players, a true freshman and, a returner from last season, so inexperienced in the offensive line. So when it comes to the wide receivers, right, our cornerback room needs to really just blanket these guys and be attached to them at all times. Colorado week 2, they're going to have wide receivers. Other teams this season, they're going to have athletes, right? So one of the things to really come out for us is to have Nebraska not only come out and stick with these guys for the entirety of the game, but they need to come out with purpose. They need to come out with fire and tenacity, which I fully expect them to do. But they need to be turned on from start to finish, right? Even when this game is out of hand, if it gets out of hand, even when it's out of hand and we have the backups in, those guys need to be locked in. We have not learned how to finish a football game, right? And it's not only finishing in close games, right? You got to be able to finish games and put your foot on people's throat and put them away. Nebraska has not been able to do that. This starts week 1 with UTEP. It is a mentality, right? You get that mentality by performing the action, right? When you're playing football on the field, they need to really start making this happen on the field and close this game out and just run away with it. That's how this needs to be. Don't let UTEP finish with momentum. This needs to be Nebraska taking charge of this game and never relinquishing control of it. That's what this performance needs to look like. Now, looking at the O-line, again, they're Austin P transfers, a true freshman, a returner, right? So our defensive line, I expect it to fully dominate as it should, right? So I'm not too worried about the O-line versus the D-line. Now, moving over to their offensive style, now that we're talking about offense, they run the style of snap every 12 seconds is what they say. And with that, again, Nebraska's defense needs to be locked in at all times, because when you have a team that snaps the ball every 12 seconds or wants to run as many plays as they do, you have to be focused on each individual play, right? And each broken play or game-breaking play, right, that is compounded against a better team. So I think, this week, of course, Nebraska is probably going to have some hiccups. It's week 1 where we can expect some of that, but they really need to not give up explosive plays against this UTEP team that is trying to find explosive plays. This defense should be solid enough to be able to maintain and keep everything in front of them. This should be a thing where they force UTEP into having to nickel and dime their way down the field and not get the explosive play that they want. Also, we can expect them to run some trick plays, right? Backs against the wall, they're going to run some trick plays, probably going to go for it on fourth and shorts, et cetera, et cetera. So Nebraska needs to be locked in and shut those down. Again, this is all a sequence of what we're going to see next week as well, right? This is week 1, right? But there's not a lot of time between week 1 and week 2. So these things need to happen quickly. Now, so with that snap every 12 seconds, that means each player needs to be locked in every single time they're on the field. The 3-3-5 is a risk-reward defense. If you're out of position, a play can be broken, right? And I trust our defense. I trust Tony White's defense enough to have everybody where they need to be. This defense is very good, very smart with where they need to be. doing their job, the 1 of 11 doing their job, trusting the guy next to him to do their job, et cetera. So nobody has to move out of place. Everybody's doing their duty, right? We had some turnover. We have some new players coming on this team. It's going to be exciting to see that as well. So they just can't get out of place. Concentrate, lock in. Another thing, force turnovers, right? If this defense is going to take on an identity of forcing turnovers, that has to begin tomorrow, right? The defense for what it was last year, again, 3-5 risk reward defense. Last year, probably not as confident in jumping routes and letting plays get behind them. It's year one in that defense, so that's fine. We didn't force a ton of turnovers, but that's part of the transition of this defense. Now that you have everybody in this risky defense where they need to be, and you're not giving up big plays. Now you can focus on let's take the next step and step in front of. You don't want to jump in front of a route unless you can get both hands on the ball as a defensive back, right? So they don't break it behind you. They're going to be doing a lot more of that this year, right? There's a lot more confidence. They're going to be more willing to jump in front of routes. You also, while the quarterback has the ball in his hands, he's behind the line of scrimmage as a linebacker in certain positions in coverage. You don't want to cross that line of scrimmage or cross into the backfield or take on that guy until he's past the line of scrimmage. Because at that point, then, even if it's a running back, they could do a little, running back pass and stuff. So for the 3-5 is essential. Wait for the guys to get past the line of scrimmage when you're in coverage before you engage. But again, year 2 in this, right? They might feel a little bit more comfortable being able to release from their spots a little early to get there. So the nuances in the defense is what I'm interested to see. And then, on with our O-line versus their D-line, let's move over to this side of the ball. Their D-line is supposed to be their strength, right? Which is, I think, a perfect test for O-line against a, highly inferior opponent to be able to come in and have their quote unquote what believed to be their strength go against our, believed to be quote unquote weakness by some. Again, I love our O-line, but it will be interesting to see how, develop this line is and be able to see some of their technique fundamentals. And I don't think our O-line should be beat very much. They shouldn't get a lot of pressure in the backfield. And if our O-line can just constantly protect, I think we can expect to see that going forward the rest of the season. Again, I am not one of these guys that's going to come in with a negative opinion about any of these linemen. I'm going to let them get out there and show their development, and I'll take it from there. That I have confidence in the players until I don't, right? And so I'll always give them the benefit of the doubt year 1 of a new season. I'm going to let them go out there and play. And then if we need to criticize their plays as the season goes along, we can do that. But we don't want to come into this with any negative expectations of any lineman or anybody. That's just not the way I like to operate, just because we don't want to root against these guys innately, unknowingly. So this team is going to really need to kind of establish their dominance in the trenches, and the D-line I expect to, but the O-line needs to really just get a push and constantly push this team back all day and control that line of scrimmage, let Nebraska build up that run game and kind of dictate their offense the way that they want to dictate the offense. And then, tackling. Tackling's always been a big thing, but for us last year, tackling was greatly improved. That improved significantly in 2022 as the year went on, but tackling was better last year. We saw yesterday in that Colorado North Dakota State game, neither one of those teams could tackle to save their life, right? So if Nebraska can just tackle, right, that's a leg up in week 2 already. Now, as we saw, the spread has already moved to 7 for the Colorado game. Again, the spread is for this one is 27.5, but let's see what Nebraska does week 1 before we get too overconfident about week 2. Again, I have my opinions about what we saw from Colorado last night, and I'm very, very confident, more confident than I was going into yesterday, that Nebraska can win that game. But again, it starts here. We can't overlook UTEP. We got to see a couple of these things in UTEP, again, albeit against a bad team, but there still are things to look for within there that we should be able to do against an inferior team, right? Being able to force 5 turnovers, right? You're not expecting that against your average team, but we should be able to go in there and force 3 turnovers, against a team like a UTEP, and we should. And that should show us that going along the course of the season, that Nebraska's in a better shape than they were, and prove it to the world. Less proving it to us, more so proving it to everybody outside of Nebraska, because everybody's still kind of like, yeah, well, let's let Nebraska get through UTEP first. Let's see them first, which is completely understandable. But I think we know kind of innately what this team is and what they're going to be. but it's the outside world too looking in. Nebraska's got to show them what they can be. The last thing too, penalties, right? Penalties, snap infractions, anything like that, and going defensively against a team that does run the ball or snap the ball as many times as they do, run as many plays as they do, you want to make sure you're not burning timeouts on the defensive side of the ball, being out of position or anything like that. You want to make sure you get into your spots. And again, conditioning, staying up, right? Keeping that rotation of 17 to 25 guys rotating through on the defensive side of the ball, and seeing how this unit operates when we have the backups on the field, when we have the third options on the field. It should be very, very similar ones, twos, threes down the depth chart in terms of how they play and how structured this defense is and how within their means they play. I feel like this defense has that level of depth. And the obvious, Raiola in the offense. We already know these things. These are kind of the things that I'm looking to, keys to the game for me to look forward to week 2. And let's hope Nebraska can get out of this with a 50 some odd to nothing blowout win. With a team like UTEP that does run that many plays, there's a potential that they could score some points. But I think if Nebraska keeps this game, keeps them under 14 points, and Nebraska scores over 40, then we're feeling really good about that. We're feeling really good about that performance. So, but yeah, UTEP tomorrow. It's finally here, guys, and I will be here for the live post game after the game. So immediately following the game, 15, 20 minutes, I will be going live after every game for the post game, and so you can join me right back here. And we can have some fun in the post game. So I have some announcements coming on the channel, so y'all stay tuned for those. But with that being said, I will see you tomorrow at the post game. Peace.